Well, hello, Manchester, Hooks at Auburn, and the world of Progress Report land, which now...
The entire universe.
The entire
We're
universe.
on the internet.
We're on the internet. We're up on YouTube. It takes about 24 hours for that to happen, on Instagram. And we have a podcast available on Spotify for the audio portion of this show. And we still have our, repeats on this particular facility, the MPTS. And we still have our call-in, and we still welcome callers.
603-640-3091.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from
Please
you.
call in. Today we're going to do a local show, so it'll be a good day to call in and
Yep.
get your point of view across.
And today we are very happy to welcome back one of our fine members of our governing body, the Board of Manchester and Alderman, and that's Will Stewart, representing Ward 2, and his son Zeke, representing Hillside.
Welcome to the Stewart gentlemen.
Particularly maybe the music program. I understand he's got a concert coming up there. So we have a lot to talk about, and we're going to get right to it. Plus, as sometimes it happens, and it's always a benefit when it does, we have some videos that Mike Farley's dug up to provide for us, and he's all excited because it's not that far away from his favorite holiday, St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day, right around the corner. I'm really hoping the bishop gives us dispensation to allow us to eat corned beef on Friday. I'm really hoping for that. Every 7 years, St. Patrick's Day shows up on Friday, and it causes some real conflict. But in the end, at least up to now, we've been very fortunate, and the bishop has allowed us to have that one meal.
And by the way, folks, I will not be here next week because I'll be out of state traveling, but Mike will be here, and he'll be doing the show that he looks forward to very much every year.
Wait, you don't?
Of course I do.
I got you, Bob.
Yeah, which is the show that predicts about the St. Patrick's Day parade, which will be the Sunday after that.
Yep, the parade is on the 28th. 28th? Yes, the 28th. I keep doing that. The 26th, Sunday. It's on Sunday, the 26th at noon. Don't listen to me. Listen to more intelligent people than me. It's on the 26th, Sunday at noon. Steps off. It's going to be a great parade. It's the 26th parade that we've put on, which should help me remember the date, I would suppose, if I had that kind of mental capacity. But it's going to be a great parade, and we'll have a show about it next week. We'll have the Grand Marshal on, who I will reveal at that time. It's out there, but I'm not going to break the news here on the show until next week.
Well, you'll have to be looking for me, Mike. I'll have my green tie. I'll have my dog. He'll be in a green sweater. It'll be great.
We'll be waving.
Yeah. So I just thought I would mention that today is the Ides of March.
Dangerous day. You packing a knife?
I am not packing a knife.
Et tu, Bob. Et tu.
But, think about that is probably one of the most significant political murders in the history of Western civilization. Many would say
the
that
Italians would have you believe that.
Well, have you seen this guy dressed up as Julius Caesar going around to different school boards in Concord? And
I saw something
Isn't
about
that the guy that
He
shot
got
up
turned
the west side about 20 years ago?
I think
Is that the same one?
He did shoot.
I don't want to
cops,
use his name, but my grandmother got evacuated out of her house to the CMC because he had a neighborhood pinned down with gunfire.
Yeah.
And now he's a righteous indignant.
And anyway,
cops, yes.
that's the Ides of March. I have no idea where this is actually the right date because calendars have changed and things and all that. But that was such a significant event, and a lot of people think that was the end of the Roman Republic because these guys that assassinated Caesar, they thought he was the danger to the Roman Republic. But I think the Roman Republic was doomed long before that. But that's another subject I don't necessarily want to get into.
Excellent.
And then
I'm happy to talk about Roman history, Bob.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, we'll have to get together and have a confab because that's a big enthusiasm of mine.
Yeah.
And
Let's
then,
talk about Sulla.
as I was mentioning before we got going, I'm not going to take up much more time. You're a great show here, great guest. But I did get to see Hamilton in Boston on Sunday, thanks to my wonderful daughter who got us tickets, and it's a phenomenal show.
I am very jealous.
And I was surprised. Will Stewart knows a lot about this musical. He's, giving me some of the famous lines from the many lines of lyrics that Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote. A phenomenal show. When you get a chance to see it, I mean, you can catch it on Disney, I guess. They've already made a movie out of it. But if you have a chance to see this thing, go see it. It's inspiring. It's wonderful. So I'm done. Now, let's talk to
Welcome to the show, folks.
Let's talk to Mr. Will Stewart
Local issues.
about what is going on with him. Will, you've been with us before, and I think in addition to being a Ward 2 alderman, and you know how many terms you serve now?
In my third term.
Third term, just like our mayor. And you also have been associated with Workplace Day. Have I got that right?
Stay, work, play.
Stay where I never get that in the right order. Is that still where your sort of your day job is, or no?
It is, yeah. I've been the executive director of Stay, Work, Play for about 5.5 years now. So
Wow.
working to attract and retain more young people here in New Hampshire.
And
Hence
not
the
just in Manchester, but throughout this
All the state. And we actually have some pretty exciting stuff coming up. We've done a
hear about
survey.
it.
Yeah. A second survey of young people in New Hampshire. So why do they stay here? Why might they leave? We're going to be announcing those results publicly on April 6th at the Bank of New Hampshire stage in Concord.
You could leak a little bit about what it's going to look like right here, right now.
You know, I will say that the pandemic, as you might expect, did play a pretty significant role in people's opinions. And one of the things I'll tease just this little bit, that it seemed to have calcified people's opinions. What they like about New Hampshire, they like a lot more than they did in 2017 when we last did this survey.
Mm-hmm.
What they like a little bit less about New Hampshire, they like even less now. And Bob, you'll appreciate this. The opinions on public transportation in particular are, probably they say they are, worse here than any other state that folks can think of. So people have a very low opinion of public transportation here in New
That
Hampshire.
is really interesting to hear. I'm really looking forward to when you have your announcement of these results from this survey.
Yeah, boy, I'd love to go further on that. But we won't do
you
that.
can count on us inviting you back real soon to talk about these issues.
I would be happy to, and I will say that we'll make the data publicly available after April 6th, and the crosstabs. Like if you're a data nerd, you are going to love these crosstabs. There's some interesting stuff there.
How many people were contacted? And I mean, what was the process? How many people did you contact to get this survey results?
Yeah, it was, I want to say in the 420 range, which for New Hampshire is a statistically valid survey done by the St. Anselm Survey Center. So it's a legit professional survey. Reliable
Wow.
data with a
Was there
plus or minus
an age range of participants?
20 to 40. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll tell you, people my age care a lot more about transportation problems than even those people in that age range, because most of them can drive.
Just
Well-
think of it.
Yeah, but
So
not all the
there's
young people can afford
Yeah.
to have
Yeah.
a car. That's the
Yeah.
that's the challenge there.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I think, one of the things we're certainly going to want to talk about Alderman Stewart with is the city budget, which is in the way of becoming, it's in the,
Well, I got a very brief tape.
and you got a nice
Kind of
brief
gives the
video.
highlights. It'll set us up. Brendan, if you want to roll the tape, we can take a look at it.
Sorry, which one was that again?
The budget, the first one.
Manchester Mayor Joyce Craig has submitted her proposed budget for the Queen City. Her plan will fully fund Manchester schools to the tune of $191 million. The $189 million spending plan for the city officially establishes the Department of Homeless Initiatives, which will use about $6 million in federal money to address housing and homelessness.
It's a fiscally responsible budget that really sets up Manchester for the future. It invests in public safety, economic development, affordable housing, and so much more.
The mayor's budget proposal also includes more staffing for the police department.
So there you go.
Those are the highlights. More staffing for police, a new department for homelessness initiatives, fairly even distribution, a little bit more on the school side than the city side, but almost 50-50, 48-52 maybe.
And that's historically how it always has been. That the majority here in New Hampshire of our tax bills, the majority does go to the school district, and for me, that's a good thing. And I say that a little bit selfishly, as you see my son here, a sixth grader at Hillside Middle School. I have a very vested interest in public education, here in New Hampshire, but not just for my own son, but this is something that when people make decisions of where they're going to live and where they're going to stay, like it's the reputation of the local school district is that by and large is making those decisions
The biggest
for
determinant.
small families. Yes, it is, and not just the quality of the local school district, but the perception of the quality of the local school
You've hit it
district.
twice. It is definitely perception drives everything. If people see a couple headlines, they're going to steer clear. And also, young people growing up in Manchester move away because they want to get into what they feel might be a better school system.
Right, and you look at some of these numbers, and you have to keep in mind that when it comes to school district funding, there's a portion that's local, as we've just heard, that local taxpayers fund, but also the state, and that's something that we've seen those
Like
numbers.
pulling teeth.
It very much is, and but we're at the point now. Here in Manchester, if you look at all of the school districts across the state, Manchester, we seem to yo-yo between the last and dead to last per capita in funding for our local school district, and that fact is not lost on young families, who have young children or considering starting families, of where they want to raise their kids, and they're looking at not just Manchester, but all of the school districts around us, at your Londonderrys and Hooksets and Wyndhams and Bedfords. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So what's your first impression as you look at this budget that the mayor's proposed? What do you think? She got it about as good as we can get it. I mean, we have the problem of the tax cap, which I never did like much, but it is the law in the city of Manchester, thanks to the.
But they didn't even go to the tax cap on this budget, did they?
Yeah, the mayor's proposed budget is below the tax cap, in fact, and below 4%, and even more than that, not even meeting that, and it's everything else. It's, as I was telling Zeke earlier today, that a lot of governing sometimes is making decisions, and it's choosing the less bad option oftentimes, and sometimes would I like to see a lot more money sometimes in certain things rather than others? Sure. But we do have a tax cap. We do have limited resources that we have to make tough choices sometimes. So I think what we have is, and the alderman, again, it's in our hands now, and we can make some different choices. And I think the budget that eventually gets passed might be a little bit different than the mayor proposed.
Usually is.
Right. Very
Usually
much.
is.
It usually is.
No, we're getting good amount of Joe Biden dollar bills. I'm sure that goes to allow us to use these numbers, 189, and yet still stay within the tax cap. But we still have to accept that money. Is that going to be an issue? Because it's both a tax and a revenue cap, or a tax and a spending cap, or a revenue and a spending cap.
Yes.
You know what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? We can't even take free money sometimes because of this tax cap.
Correct. Yeah, it gets pretty complicated pretty quick. But to make a long story short, I think we'll be able to accept the federal money that's coming in. But one of the challenges is always looking beyond the current budget cycle as well, and knowing that a lot of the federal money that's coming in from the COVID relief money and others will be kind of dropping off in the next couple of years. So always something to keep in mind.
Well, we have a caller. We love it when callers call in when we're talking about the city budget. Go ahead, caller. Thanks for calling the progress report.
Welcome to the progress report. Go right ahead.
Hi, this is the first time I called. Could I speak to the young man, please?
Sure.
I think you can. His name is Zeke.
Hi, Zeke.
Hi.
Hi, I have a question, young man. Is your dad going to run for mayor? Can you let me know?
Very clever question, caller. We were going to ask Will that, but
Is that your only question, caller?
Asking Zeke is a really stroke of genius.
Can I ask something, young man?
Well, he might.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks for the call. That was excellent, boy. But, we got to get this journalist on our side. That's excellent
That
journalism.
was very well done.
And quite a political answer, I have to say
And
as
Zeke,
well.
how would you feel about that if your dad decides to? Maybe Mayor Craig won't run for another term if your dad decides to. Would you find that exciting? Would you be ready to go out and do some campaigning? And
Yeah, I usually do it every year when my dad runs for alderman.
so you just got to cover more of the city. Got to go more places. Okay.
What I will say, he's been always been one of my secret weapons on the
I'm sure he
campaign
has.
trail, knocking on doors since 2017. Huh?
Well, there you go. We have you here, and you get the first question directed to you. That's pretty neat. See, do we want to say anything more about the city budget? And
Yeah,
its
what
prospects?
I do. I'd like to tease it out a little bit.
Sure.
I mean, let's hit the highlights that they put on the show. More money for cops. Is that going to get us more police? Are they going to get fancier facilities? How's that going to work? Do you have any idea where that's going?
Yeah, it's we do like the complement. Right now, we do need more. More cops to fill out our complement. Personally, I would like to see more in the traffic division, in particular, to talk about speeders and a lot of the.
Yeah, that's the kind of the broken windows theory there. There's a lot of traffic violations out there.
Correct,
now.
and a lot of collisions and a lot of pedestrian deaths that we've seen.
We're seeing that tick up
Yeah,
too. Yeah.
like 4 in the past 4 or 5 months. Like it's a lot. But part of the challenge that we have, even if we can and do allocate more money, toward increasing the complement, being able to find people, to serve, to wear the badge, and not just in law enforcement, but the city, writ large, is becoming increasingly challenging, like it is for the private sector, as well. Being able to find the people we need to do the jobs is tough in this economy.
Well, that takes some thinking to make the job appealing. I think that there have been many surveys that have been done as to why this phenomenon is happening. It seems to be shaking out that it's more job satisfaction.
Right.
At first it was money, but
Yeah,
it seems
usually
that it's
that's
not
what you think.
really at this point. That seems to have filtered out a little bit, and really it's job satisfaction and,
Yeah, I mean, don't
and the
get me wrong,
experience and.
Salary, I think, is always going to be it's
sure,
always
yeah.
going to be the first question people ask. But you're right, it's also benefits, it's how much am I valued, it's what are the opportunities for advancement,
And
what
again,
is this for my
and
quality
again,
of
is this the
life, my
community?
work-life
This is the
balance?
community I want my family to live in, which gets back to the perception of our education program.
Correct, it's all
Always.
connected. It's all connected.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to shift gears because I want to hit another highlight that was in the video, and that has to do with the Office of Homeless Initiatives. I hope I'm getting that right.
Yes.
Obviously, we've had how many shows this year alone, Bob, on that particular issue and peripheral issues around it. It is huge in the city of Manchester. It's even huger, by the way, for those poor people that are experiencing it. So, what's that going to look like? We have 2 people in there now. Is that just going to continue this, or is there going to be an expansion?
We have one person. One person.
Okay.
And so, to me, you're right. This is, in my opinion, the most pressing issue, facing not just Manchester, but New Hampshire, New England, and to a large extent the nation.
Absolutely.
Correct. The Wall Street Journal had an article about a month ago saying that, especially here in New England, though, it's especially exacerbated for a number of reasons, and housing being the underlying issue. But here in New Hampshire and here in Manchester, it's something that we have to address. And having basically a division of one person is, in my opinion, not enough. We need to do more.
I thought she was teaming up with a gentleman who, I guess he's dealing with substance recovery,
abuse,
so
yes.
which is integrally related to the homelessness issue,
It
but
is.
not all of a parcel.
Correct.
They're actually separate issues. I understand.
No, both of those employees work closely together, and they're both subject matter experts with a lot of great professional expertise and experience. And I have full faith in both of them. But this issue is just so huge. As you mentioned, it's not just housing related. You're right. It is substance abuse. It is mental health. It is poverty. It is lack of social connections. I mean, it's just so complex. And it's one of these things, I get it. If it was easy to solve, it would have been solved a long time ago, right? And somebody would have solved it somewhere in this country, in this world. But that's not been the case. But that said, having 1 or even 2 people to address a situation this complex is not enough. We just need
We
more.
can agree on that, and we see maybe this is progress. Is it window dressing, or is this progress?
I think it is progress. Is it enough and fast enough? I don't think it is. I think we need to do more. We need to do more of, in my mind, getting all of the players, all of the stakeholders who have a stake in the homelessness issue. Government, one, but government can't solve all problems, nor should we. But we can coordinate, the efforts of not just governmental entities, state, local, and federal, but also our nonprofit partners and our faith-based partners too. But I think part of that is getting us all kind of agreed on the same goal.
Well, you talk about stakeholders and partners. The state of New Hampshire is a stakeholder in everything that happens in the city of Manchester. And we have a governor who, instead of getting serious about providing mental health care for Manchester citizens, scolds hospital presidents and tries to shame them. I don't even know if it's their job, but I do know it's the state's job. And I do know that the state bought a hospital but can't use it because they have no money for salaries. So how can it be that we have a state that is completely indifferent to the problem? I happen to have a friend who ended up dead because he made the mistake of having to go to an emergency room in a mental health crisis. And you can see it makes me angry that so many years have passed and we're worse now. How do we get the state to do its part? We have a huge delegation up there.
We do, and I will say there's been a number of federal dollars that have come through the state to help the city address these issues. More is needed, more coordination is needed, and getting everybody singing from the same hymnal is needed. I think that's part of the challenge that we face, is that a lot of the entities that are funded with state dollars or federal dollars coming through the state are accountable and incentivized for different metrics, and they're not always aligned with are we reducing homelessness in Manchester? Some entities might be repaid by how many beds did you fill last night? How many meals did you give last week? But nobody, I don't think, is being paid or repaid or incentivized.
How many families did you
get out
off
of
the street?
homelessness last month? Right. And I think that's part of the challenge that we face.
Well, I think the homeless issue's been big and a big issue for a long time, but it seemed to reach a real acute problem when they had the encampment out there on Pine Street next to the.
It's just because we could see it.
Yeah,
when they were in the woods, it wasn't
exactly.
as bad.
If you can't see it, I guess it's out of sight, out of mind, as
very
they say.
visible. Yeah.
But that was a real crisis, and it looks like it was handled to some extent. And I guess I'm going to ask you, to what extent was it handled? We opened up the facility at 39 Beach Street, and I think there were some other facilities. Have we now got the housing that those folks that are otherwise homeless who choose to accept the housing, and not all do? I understand that.
That's a fair point.
We have the housing. I mean, have we made any progress since that crisis on Pine Street?
I think we have made some progress. Yes, there is not an encampment on the corner of Manchester and Chestnut Street.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
I'm
progress.
sorry, Chestnut. It was
Chestnut.
Yeah.
Pine, Chestnut. Yeah, sorry. So that's progress. Those people are not living on the street. But I think a lot of the things that we do, we're addressing, they're kind of Band-Aid downstream solutions.
The reaction as opposed to driving the situation forward.
Right. What we need to be addressing, and we need to do both in tandem. It's not an either or, it's a both.
Yeah.
We need to be addressing both the needs on the ground today of the people who are experiencing homelessness, because it is heartbreaking. People are dying, in these tents. They're, really having acute trauma, in these tents. But we also, at the same time, need to address the factors that lead to this, and that is investing. Again, state, federal, local, nonprofit, faith-based, to talk about these issues upstream to make sure that people have a place to live if they're ready to move into housing, to have the supportive services that are needed, to have the mental health services that are needed, the substance abuse options that they want when they want help. And until we have that, we're just going to be, putting Band-Aids, on a much larger wound.
Do they still have the continuum of care organizations that we're supposed to coordinate? Are they still up and running?
The continuum of care is, and they meet monthly and more than that, I know, and are doing a lot of good work. But one of the challenges with continuum of care, I mean, that's that coordinates federal HUD dollars, housing and urban development dollars, which is just focused on housing. But of course that's limited. I mean, yes, housing is the underlying issue, but again, it's substance abuse, it's mental health, it's lack of social connections. So that's one piece of the puzzle that they're addressing. But there are still a lot of others that are not being addressed adequately.
So that raises another subject real easily for me, and that is, how are we doing addressing the housing affordability in Manchester, workforce housing as they call it? We see an awful lot of significant development.
Market value development.
Yeah, we got that. We got the building just about to be ready across the Market Basket. I guess the project on the Pearl Street parking lot has finally got its approvals from the city that it needs to go. Where do we stand on that? Are we going to be able to offer people the workforce housing so we can get the people that come to Manchester to fill the jobs that don't pay salaries to afford more than workforce housing?
Yeah, again, talk about another complex, issue, to address. Right now
But
in the
one
city,
step removed from homelessness, though. You know what I mean? It's like
again, it's all
just
connected, right?
one step ahead of that.
Yes, it is, and it's again, housing is the underlying issue, for homelessness and a number of other issues, and we need people like in Manchester. Our businesses need employees, our nonprofits need volunteers and board members. Our churches need people to pass the plate on Sunday. Like we need people in general, and to do that, people need places to live. And to your point about affordability and market rate rents, like right now we have about 2,000 homes, apartment homes, at some point in the pipeline, either under active development or somewhere in like the planning and zoning approval process. About a quarter of those are what are kind of meet the official designation of affordable, and we can argue about whether that's
a
truly
reasonable
affordable.
ratio, but that's a reasonable ratio, I think, for your development. I know we need more, but
Yeah.
you can't expect developers not
Right.
to make the profit that they're out to make.
Yeah, we always need more, and that's one of the big rubs that we face as government. Again, like I said earlier, government can't do everything, but we can do some things. There are things that we can control and have influence on, and things that we have less influence on. Bob, you mentioned the Pearl Street lot and also the Hartnett lot. These are two underutilized public
Indeed,
parking
they are.
lots.
They're never full with
No,
cars. Never.
like maybe like the Pearl Street lot especially. Like you go by there, I've never seen that thing more than 30% full.
Right.
And even the Hartnett lot, maybe at the busiest time it might be half full.
Right.
And with a parking garage right across the street.
Exactly.
So there are higher and better uses for these pieces of property, and we're going to see those developed, with multi-story apartment buildings, and these are parcels that are city-owned property. So we have a little bit of leverage there, to tell the developer when who we sold these, pieces to, that we want a certain percentage of these to be, more affordable, not just market rate apartments. I would argue that they're.
Are you getting pushback on that, or are the developers listening?
Not too much. They're listening. They're wanting to be a good partner on this. And again, don't get me wrong. There are still challenges with regard to the inflationary pressures that we're all facing.
It's got to work for the bank, right?
Right, and they're facing them too with regard to like construction materials, with regard to wages for employees if they can find them to actually do the
Yeah.
work. So there are real challenges to that. But again, the city has some leverage. But if it's a private developer on private property, we don't have a lot. There was an example I use in Ward 2 up on the Wellington Hill area, where a company came in and said we wanted to build. There's a 38-acre parcel up there, part of which was city-owned, part of which was owned by the Diocese of Manchester, and part of which was owned by a few private property owners. But 38 acres in total. It was marketed, sold, and the developer wants to build. They said about 300 units. And they came to me as the ward alderman, wanted to get my input and see what I thought. And I talked to them about wanting to see an additional means of egress from that neighborhood, but also to have some additional housing units. And we kind of went back and forth and had some conversations, and they agreed to put in 12 units of affordable housing. Now, out of 300, is it a significant proportion? No. But is it 12 more
12
units
more
of affordable
units,
housing
yeah.
than we had? It's better than zero,
Better than zero, for
I
sure.
think.
Yeah.
And so it's every little bit we have to press every advantage that we can get to get those more units, period, because it is a supply and demand issue ultimately. But to the extent that we can push for those affordable units that are affordable to those people who are giving us our coffee at Dunkin' Donuts when we go through the drive-through, who are drawing our blood at the doctor's office. I mean, these are the people that we need, or who are helping our parents at the assisted nursing facilities. These are the people we need to make life happen. And if we don't have them, we're out of luck.
Yeah, we are, and and there's a great need in all those areas you've just mentioned, no doubt about it.
We're right at a spot where I think we could call Brendan up and see if we could put about 35 seconds of that next video up, because it has to do with a housing construction project in the city.
Hi everybody. As you recall, I did kind of a quick walk video here of this old building that once stood here, and I mentioned that it was going to be torn down into apartment buildings. And there was a bunch of people in the comments section claiming that it was not going to be torn down and that it was all going to get restored and turned into apartments. And I kind of disagreed with it because I read the plans, and the plans are completely different than what the existing building was. And there was no way that they could possibly park as many cars as were needed for the amount of people that were living here. So I knew this.
Well, I think everybody who's driven in the city of Manchester is familiar with that lot. It's kind of a weird corner at the bottom of Canal Street, the very end of Canal Street, where Auburn Street ends. Happens to be the location of the B&M railway terminal that was destroyed. That beautiful Victorian building that led to, I think, the Manchester zoning ordinance or something, because not even the mayor knew until the wrecking ball arrived that that building was going to get torn down. And ironically,
Terrible thing.
the John Varick warehouse, which was located at that corner, which was a historic building in the city of Manchester. John Varick, a titan of the hardware industry in Manchester. He appears, and his stores on Elm Street appear in every history book you're going to read about the city of Manchester. He was a big, important figure. That warehouse was right on the rail line. The tracks rolled right into it. That's where Manchester got its plumbing and its coal hods and everything else it needed. The building was not registered with any historical, the National Registry of Historic Places. But by the way, you can tear those buildings down too. That's just a bragging. It affords no protection to the building. It's just a bragging right and is used in preservation. But holy cow, Will, what do you think of tearing down historic buildings like that?
It's tough. It's as we were talking about, I'm a student of history myself. We were talking a little bit of Roman history earlier, so I certainly have an appreciation of historic structures. And yeah, I've seen pictures of the old train station and these beautiful buildings, and those aren't being built again in that way, and there's no way to get that back. I always have to balance things though with what are the needs of people today.
Fair enough, understood. However, if there is a process to review whether or not the building is in fact historically significant, and whether or not two things can happen. One, you can try to keep the building and work within it, or two, you can take photographs, preserve certain pieces of it, and incorporate them into the lobbies of these new buildings. Historic preservation can take place across a continuum of historical care. These guys didn't even go. They didn't even go.
Well,
what do you think of that?
I would just say, Mike, you kind of denigrate the idea of a historic designation. I think it can make an enormous difference because people can rally around that.
Well, absolutely, but legally it affords no legal protection.
Well,
but
it helps out enormously if
Yeah.
you have that designation and you want to rally people to support your cause at this building, or at least, as you say, maybe the elements of it to be incorporated in the new structure. Yeah, but I certainly think Alderman Stewart's correct. We have a huge need for the additional housing that's going to be there. So,
Well, I think there's a balancing act to be made, and I think that one of the things that I love about Manchester and that struck me when I moved here back in 2004 was just the strong sense of place that Manchester has, and a sense of history I think that pervades the city writ large. And I love that. Manchester is many things, and but one thing I think that we can agree upon is it's authentic. It might be, we can argue that it may be a little gritty, in some places. It might be a little gentrified.
That's what
in
makes
others.
it great.
I would agree. It's real. It's real.
yeah.
And that's what I love about Manchester, and its history is a strong part of that. So yeah, Mike, I would love to see, when, we can't preserve everything, right? And that, progress, has to happen and change is inevitable. However, to the extent that we can, first acknowledge, record, and, to the extent we can, save and preserve, our history, we should do that. Even if it is, yes, taking those pictures, recreating things, virtually, having pieces that we can put in lobbies and in display cases, we need to save that, and preserve that. But I think, at the end of the day, I mean, Christ himself, said, "Let the dead bury the dead." That we have very real needs right now that also have, the present has to be balanced in addition to the past. And there are people today, like we have a vacancy rate of less than 1%. We need housing.
Completely understood, Alderman, and I do not make it a point of debating our guests. We love our guests, and we want to get your point of view out.
I like a good debate.
But I have just a couple things to say. Should the building department of Manchester issue a building permit to a developer that doesn't have the proper permits?
I would have to look more into. I'll hedge a little bit
Okay, fair
in
enough.
fairness and say
Fair
look
enough.
at
And like I
where
said,
state and
there are any
local
number of
municipals
different
come in.
ways preservation could have been afforded.
Yeah.
I happen to have worked on a building in downtown Boston that was 7 stories high. They put 10 on top of it and preserved the street level. It can be done. It's the want to. But even this wasn't even the want to. This was really a bulldozer job. And I really wish that the city would pay more attention. That's all I'm lobbying for. Pay more attention.
That's a fair request.
Okay. So let me turn to another subject, and you brought it up, and I was very pleased that you did when we were getting ready to come on here, and the issue of community power.
Yeah.
Oh,
We're
great.
seeing, in my view, and having been served in the House Science, Technology, and Energy Committee, the state is falling down dreadfully on its need to advance sound energy policies for the state of New Hampshire. And that is, I mean, we have not set new goals for installing renewable energy or energy efficiency. That's all gone by the wayside under the control of the other folks in the State House.
And they even cut funding for insulating windows. Remember that?
I mean, it's just a horrible result. But the result is there's a certain number of very talented, capable people like Clifton Below, the deputy mayor of Lebanon, former PUC commissioner, former state senator, and many others have said, well, let's look at our municipalities, our towns and cities. And the key to that initiative, and Clifton and many others have been real key on this, is what we call community power. Now, you and I have talked about this a bit, Will. And community power means nothing more than letting your municipal government be the entity on behalf of its citizens and for its own accounts negotiate for power prices, principally for electricity. It could also be for gas supply, I guess, too. It doesn't have to be just electricity. And we're now seeing the results of the Community Power Coalition, which some people in Manchester, particularly Rick Maynard, have been very involved in. And they now have a number of communities. I don't remember how many, 11, 12, 13, including one city, Keene. They are just beginning to negotiate the power contracts on behalf of their citizens and their own accounts and achieving significant results. Why hasn't Manchester got going on this, and when will we?
So, I'm definitely I think it's definitely time to revisit this conversation with regard to community power. I mean, it's like, any of us as individuals can go out and, secure our own, supply side, when it comes to electricity.
And let me just say that most big customers, industrial customers, large and commercial customers, have done that successfully.
Right.
You and I are
listen to me.
little modest residential consumers with our 650 kilowatts per, whatever. Not so likely to do it because it's demanding, and you may not get the results. But if you have
In
buying
unity,
power,
there is strength.
in unity there is strength.
That's
There's
right.
bargaining power.
Because me individually, you individually, Mike, like we might not be able to get the best deal, but if it's the three of us together and 10,000 more of our fellow ratepayers, we can get a better deal.
You can get listened to. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly. And I mean, that's, principal basic economics that we're talking about here.
Yep.
So what we've seen, right now, you're right, with those, 10 or a dozen, communities that were kind of at the vanguard of this community power movement, their residents, starting in May, we'll see, at least those who are on Eversource, we'll see a 22%, reduction in their supply charge, energy supply charge.
Which is skyrocketed for those of us that are watching their electric bills. They have skyrocketed.
Correct. And, so I think it's something that, as the state's largest municipality, we want to, maybe certainly, take a pause, see how it's going to work out, maybe let somebody else, for lack of a better word, be the guinea pig. But now I think we've seen the guinea pig, and the guinea pig is saving money.
The guinea pig is thriving.
Correct. So maybe let's talk about emulating that. And I think Manchester ratepayers and residents deserve that opportunity to save some money too.
So how's this going to get pushed forward in Manchester? Who's going to lead the charge in the Board of Mayor and Alderman, or
Well, I would be happy to take up that. I will say that back during the summer, I did convene, a meeting at the Department of Public Works with, one of my colleagues and, some of the folks from the Community Power Coalition and, Department of Public Works personnel to talk about where things stood and, what it might take and, any concerns with regard to getting Manchester involved. And, kind of the consensus that was, that we came to was like, let's wait and see, how the numbers turn out when this, first group of communities kind of goes to market and see what kind of rates they get.
When was that meeting?
Back in the summer of 2022.
So we've waited.
So
We've
we
seen.
waited now,
We have, and we
and
got those
now we
numbers.
have good evidence that the
What's that
results
percentage
are
you said?
not,
What
not
was that
oversold.
percentage?
22%, Mike. And
know?
I will tell you that just this morning, I sent an email out, saying like, hey, I linked to the article that was in New Hampshire Bulletin that gave the numbers and said, I think it's time for us to revisit this. Because it's something that I think that, when we talk about reducing, the, cost of living, here in Manchester, a lot of times, we go immediately to taxes, because that's one, instance where, government has, kind of, very much, direct control. But,
But you
taxes
could
are
save
just a
me
piece
$700
of
or
it.
$800 a year if I could get a 20% discount on my electricity.
And that's significant. That's significant.
Yeah.
So it's, taxes are a piece of, reducing that cost of living, but so is energy. That's a pretty huge piece of most households. It's certainly for my house's budget. Yeah, my family's budget.
Yep.
And
Well,
then imagine if we could get good transportation and, a train that would come up and we could go and enjoy Hamilton down in Boston. Imagine what a world it would be.
As the Hamilton lyric would say, it must be nice.
Yeah, every other city in the country.
Yeah. It's not. Wouldn't it be nice to have Washington on your side, right? Oh boy, I tell you, I love that show. Anyway, and I'm glad you did too. It's
I'm a fan.
You're a fan. I tell you, really wonderful. Okay, so there's that. And I was really intrigued when you said we should look forward to your survey results coming out in early April 6th. For where you have your day job, so to speak. And I was interested to hear you say that transportation was a great concern, and that you teased that result.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you a little bit about that too. I think the Manchester Transit does an excellent job of what they're doing. We've had Mike Whitten on here, and I really admire the guy. He's a guy that came up starting as a driver all the way to running the system. And
Mike is one of the smartest people I know.
and he's very good. But we have certain parts of the city that are underserved. We have no service on Sundays. I don't know why not. Nashua does. I was surprised to learn that. And then there's the whole issue of, Mike brought it up because it's one of my hobby horses. Are we ever going to get this commuter rail back to Manchester as the largest metropolitan area in the country, I'm told, without any access to passenger rail? So you want to talk a little bit about transportation and what we might hope for there?
I would love to. I mean, it's something, to me what it comes down to is options. And, I don't know about you, I like having options, generally speaking,
Yeah.
In life. And when it comes to transportation, we don't have too many options. Like if you want to get around, New Hampshire, you pretty much have to have a vehicle.
Yeah.
And that means you pretty much have to have a car payment. It's something that, bus service, whether intracity, intercity, you're right, the options are limited. Even here in Manchester, the largest city north of Boston, you have 6-day, a week service, doesn't go past 7 p.m. on most routes. You're waiting an hour, to make any type of connection. Like it's a service of, it's not a service of choice. It's a service of, kind of last resort. You have to use, but I'd like to get to the point, yes, where people have choices, whether they want to get across town, whether they want to get across the state, or whether they want to connect to Boston and the rest of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. I must say I was very fortunate. I looked up the schedule for Boston Express out of Londonderry, and we were able to take the bus down and the bus back and have a very short walk to see the show.
Had
It
to
was
drive to
wonderful.
Londonderry.
Well, we had to drive
Had
to
to drive
Londonderry.
to a
That's
tiny
where
little
that's where I was
town
going.
that's misnamed.
The buses, there's only one bus per day coming and one bus going that stops anywhere in Manchester. I can't
If you can
believe
convince
that.
the bus driver to stop, we heard, you know?
Well, this again, like Boston Express, subsidized by the state of New
Yep,
Hampshire.
you and I are paying for those buses.
Correct. Used to have greater service, downtown, and they still, have a little bit. But again, they're essentially a private company that
And
makes their
you
own.
go to a closed bus terminal that's been open for 4 years and it's dark at night and I mean it's just unbelievable. The city of this size and vitality.
Now, I'll just remind Bob how I feel about these public-private partnerships, okay?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna bring that up again because
Well,
I do
anyway.
it.
So can we do something about that? If we can't get the commuter rail here, which I certainly hope we will. I know there's stiff opposition from people I wish weren't in opposition. But if we can't get that, can't we at least have a significant intercity bus service return to the heart of the city?
Yeah, well, I will say that Manchester Transit Authority does offer intercity bus service to Concord and Nashua, which
And the
is-
beach in the summer.
And
Correct.
the beach?
And one of the things that I've worked on, and I don't know what your the background on the public-private partnerships is, Mike, but I will say one of the things that I was able to do. I'm a former Manchester Transit Authority commissioner, before I became an alderman, and so public transportation has always been near and dear to my heart as an economic development tool, as a personal mobility tool, and just as a quality of life tool for people. But one of the things that I've been working on, and we piloted it last year, was a partnership between the Manchester Transit Authority and the Nature Conservancy. Where we were able to, the Nature Conservancy of New Hampshire was able to, bring some money to the table, to be able to provide bus service, once a month, from May to I believe September, to offer bus transportation, from downtown Manchester, to various, places where people could experience the outdoors.
I never heard about this.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. It's called Transit to Trails, and
Where do they take you, for example?
it would take you to everywhere from like the Autobahn, in
And
Auburn,
Massabesic, yeah.
and Massabesic, correct. To points north and south, to various accessible
neat.
hiking trails, right? Because that's part of the challenge. Is like like if you live in the center city of Manchester, and maybe you don't own a car. Like, and you're a family and you have kids, like, do those kids, how many who live in the center city of Manchester or the west side of Manchester who maybe don't own a car are able to get out and experience and enjoy the outdoors? I mean, that's
Which
one of
is so vital for, I think, a robust life. I mean,
It
lots
is.
of studies say, you got to get outside and preferably with people you care about and can enjoy the experience as a group. But it's so
correct.
important.
And here in New Hampshire, like, our outdoor
The
recreational
opportunities are there, you just gotta
amenities
get to them.
are world class.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you don't have a car and you can't get to them, like,
Well, that's another service we didn't even talk about when we had the MTA on, that's
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
interesting to know.
that's really interesting.
You're talking about quality of life in Manchester, and that's, you mentioned it's gritty, it's a gritty city, but we have always, from the beginning, tried to enhance and maintain the quality of life. We have a great library. That block is gorgeous, and it is well-stocked, and it is a wonderful resource.
Agreed.
We have a fantastic airport, in the city of Manchester. It's in Londonderry, but it's our airport.
25% of it's in Manchester.
In Ward 8, by the way, which I'm very proud of. But
And we got a new airline, a new service coming in today. You might
Yeah,
have heard.
absolutely. Good
What's
news.
that?
Yeah, we have service to Raleigh-Durham,
From what airline?
Avello.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, go
Got
ahead.
to
I'm
pick them
sorry.
up. But I wanted to move. I'm going to segue a little bit. A couple other things that we have in Manchester. We have the great parks that were laid out by the Amoskeag Corporation when they laid out the city. Manchester, a lot of people, some people don't like it. We have a golf course, city-owned golf course that people can recreate at. We have a city-owned ski mountain
Yeah.
right within the city.
Let's.
You know where I'm going with this.
I
would
want
like-
to let Zeke chip on this.
I'd like
'cause
you
he
guys
has-
to talk
He
about
has some experience with the benefits of having that ski
these
area where it
quality
is.
of life issues that a
Go
lot
ahead.
of people poo-poo
Talk-
a
talk-
city shouldn't be doing it.
Talk
but,
about what that McIntyre ski area. How you enjoy that?
Yeah, my dad and I, we always during sometime in the winter, we always like to go tubing together.
Really?
Yeah.
At least once or twice a year, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you race?
Sometimes.
Do you ever beat him?
Sometimes.
It happens. And last year, and you're at Hillside now, but when you were at Smith Road last year, you were able to just like literally walk down the hill,
Yeah.
from Smith Road to McIntyre and take snowboarding lessons. I mean,
Yeah.
where else do kids get to do that? Like, that's a
Yeah.
huge
That's-
amenity. in
When
Manchester.
I was
That's
a
really
kid,
wonderful.
we'd get on a bus and bus up to Pat's Peak, and
Right. You don't have to
once-
go all the way to
once-
Henniker.
but here we have it in Manchester
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah,
It
It's
really
a great
is.
thing.
Yeah.
Do you think it's worth it, Alderman? Do you think having these amenities is worth it to a city, or should we just be bare knuckles and all business?
No, like, look, parks, recreational amenities, cultural amenities, like libraries and museums. I mean, these are what make places interesting and make places that
Yeah.
people want to live.
Yeah.
And again, like, our future success depends largely on our ability to attract and retain the talent that we need.
Yeah.
And, talent, wants to live in an interesting, good, safe,
Vibrant
place.
places.
Vibrant place.
And,
these
and
are
let me
those
just
things.
add something I know you'll agree with. I don't know you mentioned it. Arts, performing arts, and art generally. We have a wonderful museum here. Really great world-class museum, a small one, but the Courier Gallery. We have, thanks to Peter Ramsey and what he's done with the Palace and the Rex now.
Not to mention the Dana Center at St. A's.
Dana
There's
Center
a
at
very
St.
lively
A's,
lineup.
yeah.
Manchester Community Theater Players, the Majestic. I mean,
Yeah.
we have Slam Free or Die Slam Poetry.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot going on, and you're right. Like, my wife likes to say, she runs an independent theater up in Concord, Red River, and I
She
steal
does.
this line from her that she's like, oftentimes like the arts are proof of life in a community.
Yeah.
And like, it's basically if you might not like the arts yourselves, like for me personally, like I don't go to the symphony. That's not my thing. But I like living in a place where I can have access, to things
Yeah,
like that. I don't go to every Slam Free or Die, exhibition. I don't go to every exhibition at the Courier, even though I live like a quarter mile. I don't go to everything at the Rex or the Palace, but I love having those amenities and knowing that I can.
Yeah.
And you
it's-
get to interact with people who do go to those things,
Yes.
and that makes that interaction that much more
right,
interesting.
and knowing that if I live in a community that can support those types of things, it's probably an interesting community, and it is. And
Yeah.
Manchester definitely is that.
So Zeke,
Yes.
you're here. We've had some interesting observations from you. You're at Hillside School now. What do you think's great about the city, and what would you like to see the city do better for, say, Hillside, or your experience there? What are the things you would like to see happen in the city of Manchester? If somebody I hope is going to grow up and live here a long time.
Yeah. Well, I do like at Hillside, like the amount of things that are available there. Like you can learn to do an instrument or learn a new language there.
Mm-hmm. And you're doing both of those things.
Yep.
Yep.
I'll tell you
Okay.
one thing he's been lobbying me on that been working on is a dog park on
Yeah.
the east side of Manchester, talking about those types of amenities.
Yeah.
But he's been a very, very strong advocate on that.
That is something we are lapping. And, when I was campaigning in Manchester running for the State House, that was one thing I heard. Why doesn't Manchester have a dog park? And I guess a former alderman created a very small one over, somewhere near the Queen City Bridge. I don't even know it's still there, but
It is, but it's
Yeah.
basically a private,
yeah.
dog park.
And,
that they're-
that would be a nice amenity of life. And,
A lot of liability issues with things like that. That's why, skateboard parks, they'd be fantastic, but people get hurt at those.
But you know what? Like, plenty of communities have them, Mike. Like, Hooksett has a dog park. Derry has
Nice
a dog
one.
park.
Derry's got a very
Somersworth,
nice dog park,
Portsmouth.
yeah.
Yeah, I know, because we drive. We have to drive there and take our dog there.
Yeah.
Like, why do I have to leave Manchester?
you drive all the
do
way to
that?
Derry to have your dog go in a dog park?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Really?
do.
Right.
Really?
Yeah, they also have some really good stuff up
Well,
there.
there's a real good issue to campaign on if you're running for office again.
Yeah, no, and
Yeah.
I'll tell you, like, myself and the former Ward 6 alderman, we're of different political parties. He recently left office, but
Yes,
it was
he did.
something that we were working on in a bipartisan fashion. I mean, dogs are pretty bipartisan.
They are.
So we were able, to work on that, to on an effort on the east side. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll see that come to fruition.
And one that's available to everybody, and you don't have to take a subscription, you know?
Correct. Correct.
You know, we're right up against the end of the hour. It goes by so fast, and it's been wonderful to have you here, Will, and we'll have you back again, particularly now that you've teased us with that survey result coming out, which I think
Yeah,
is
I
going to
can't
be
wait to
very
hear that.
interesting.
Yeah, a lot of good data.
But that just, you know, talking about transportation makes me also think about making a city friendly for bicycles and walkable. And we've done some good work there. We got more work to do there too. Don't you agree?
I definitely do. As the co-founder and former chair of Bike Manchester, which was a bicycle advocacy organization now affiliated with the Queen City Bike Initiative, I'm very much a proponent of making the city. You know, again, it all comes down to options.
Yeah.
You know, let's give people the options, and they should be able to you should be able to walk safely.
Yeah,
You should
yeah.
be able to bike safely.
There were some natural barriers, though. Some accessibility issues. Getting into the mill yard is just a little tricky. It's getting better.
It's getting
But
better,
it's
and it's
a little
probably going to get a
tricky.
lot better soon with some of the
That
projects.
pedestrian bridge over Granite Street is going to make a huge difference.
Right. Well, you talk about history. I mean, you know, the mill yard was, you know, designed, you know, by the Amoskeag. Like, you know, the mill yard is separate from the living. Like, that's where you go to work. And they wanted it to be completely separate, physically and otherwise, you know, from people's, you know, living situations. So, I agree. But we need to do a better job of like connecting these various areas and removing those barriers.
Yeah, yeah. Well, very good. Mike, you want to talk a little bit what's coming up on your parade show? We're pretty much at the end here.
Well, as I said, we will have the Grand Marshal, who we're going to leave to an. Well, why not? It's Dick Phelan. Dick Phelan, a great Manchester guy, was named Grand Marshal of this year's parade. And as I have said, Bob, for years, that is second only to the bishop in the hierarchy of the city of Manchester, as I see it. That is a very high honor. It is a great parade. We'll talk a lot about it. Folks, I hope you can plan on getting down there on the 26th. Sunday, it's going to be great weather. It will be at least tolerable weather. It's going to be great weather. Can't decide. But it's a great parade. And you want to know something? It doesn't cost the city anything. It is completely funded by private individuals and businesses and a private committee that goes out and puts
Sounds
it
like a
on.
public-private partnership there, Mike.
Oh, no, it's all private. It's all private. We pay for the cops. We'd love to have a partnership. Alderman.
We provide the street.
Well, I want to thank you for coming and bringing Zeke along, too. It's really good to have you here, too, Zeke. You've been here before, and we hope when the Alderman comes back, you'll come back as well. And we appreciate this. I think this has been great. And, folks, we'll be up on YouTube in about 24 hours.
Our time is up. See you next week, folks.
See you next week. Bye.